Our particular program at the seminary covers about 5 years. Once the candidate has fulfilled the requisites in philosophy, they study for 2 years in various aspects of theology, in scripture, systematic theology, in moral theology, some pastoral theology, some church history, and then they go off and do a full year in the parish, living in the parish, shadowing and observing and getting involved in the life of the parish, working very closely with the pastor and the parishioners there, and reflecting on that experience and learning and growing from that experience. And then coming back and studying for 2 more years at the seminary here. And then from that, being ordained to the diaconate, actually usually after their 3rd year of theology, so after 4 years of formation. And then after their 5th year of formation, be ordained to the priesthood. So that sort of roughly covers the formation timeline. What do we look for in a candidate who comes forward for formation at the seminary? I think we're looking really for a man who's open to formation, open to being configured or conformed to the person of Jesus. I think in so many ways, a priest who serves the church as a parish priest becomes and is the face of Jesus for the faithful. This face of Jesus, this person of Jesus, is a person of compassion, a person who's willing to give of themselves without counting the cost, a person who is immersed in prayer, in that constant dialogue with the Father, and a person who's willing to undergo inconveniences, even suffering, for the good of the people that they serve, in order to bring these people into a closer relationship with Jesus and his saving presence in their life. And so in so many ways, men come here to be formed to become priests are in a way bridges, in a sense, I think, so that people might be able to cross, in a sense, from this life into the life of God, of the supernatural.
It's by deliberation a kind of break with the sort of life that you would have experienced in high school or in college or in a secular job market. In order to prepare yourself to be a good priest, a good confessor, a good counselor, someone who is to some extent apart from life so that he can help people in their daily struggles, we set up a kind of classical religious formation, regular prayers, morning prayers, evening prayers, night prayers, prayers before lunch. We put a lot of stress on the importance of eating together, which is something that's not necessarily observed by even many families these days because of modern life is so hectic. But we make the effort to put aside some time to be together for our meals and have different experiences at each of those meals too. And in the morning we find that it sometimes is difficult to be charitable to each other. So we don't spend a lot of time talking to each other in the morning. We eat breakfast rather quickly and in silence and then get about our business. It can be a kind of a calm, refreshing way to begin the day. And then at lunch, after having spent the morning in classes, the seminarians take their lunch alone without members of the community or faculty to be looking over their shoulders so that they can talk about their classes and do their imitations of the faculty and having a kind of a free exchange of opinions and arguments and information. At our evening meal, we have a typical monastic style meal where we don't talk to each other, but we listen to the reader who's appointed from our community, who starts out by reading a short passage from Scripture, the lives of the saints, the life of our founder, St. Philip Neri, and then a book a biography or a history or some religious book that takes several months usually to get through. It's like being in elementary school again and listening to your teacher read to you every day after lunch. During dinner, we get through. Right now, we're reading the history of the Council of Trent. And that prevents having arguments at night. And it also can be kind of an education. It's a slightly formal meal. We take turns serving each other, so you learn to be a waiter. If the vocation as a priest doesn't work out, you can always say, I've had 3 years' experience or 2 years' experience being a waiter at St. Philip's Seminary, and since we teach you the proper way to wait on tables, it shouldn't be at all difficult for you to get a job. We have certain devotions that take place for the parishioners in the church, and seminarians help out with those, help out serving masses, learn also to work in the sacristy. And this is always, I think, a bit of an adjustment for people when they come, especially if they're very pious. You have a better chance of actually working out in the sacristy if you're not particularly pious, because you might have developed a habit of particular forms of prayer. You like to go off and do that all by yourself and not be annoyed by anyone else around you. But when you're a priest, you have to be leading the prayers, and you have to be praying while you are keeping something going. And it takes many priests a while to learn that, unless they have had, as seminarians, experience serving Mass, setting up the sacristy, setting up the books so that they know where the prayers are to be found. Sometimes you see a priest, if the ribbon isn't in the right place, he's completely lost, but all of our seminarians know how to find the proper prayers. So you have that kind of experience. Our seminarians also have a chance to go out to many of the nursing homes that we serve in the area and to develop relationships with some of the inmates of these houses. Largely, they're very old people. Sometimes they are people with incurable illnesses. They won't be ever leaving these nursing homes. And that's a kind of a practical work of charity that is a good break from the studies. And of course, we have also the studies where a certain amount of hard work is required. It's not work that anyone with an average amount of intelligence would find impossible to do, but it's work that requires application and constant thought. You're trying to develop new habits and an ability to speak to people. Anyone can come up to you after Mass on the vestibule and ask you the most outrageous question off the cuff that you have to have something to say about. They say, well, if God is so good, why is there so much suffering in the world? Comes up very frequently. You have to have something to say about the problem of evil, the problem of suffering, and know when that's an intellectual problem for people and when it's a problem that stems from something that's occurred in their life that needs a more pastoral touch. So all of these things you're working into in the seminary. You're not being dropped off in the priesthood and left to function by yourself with no guidance and no development. It's a slow immersion in this new way of life. And that's why, as I started out by saying, it's kind of a break with many of the patterns that you will have observed prior to coming to seminary.